everybody. Welcome to Round the Horn. Our special guest this week is Stan Goldstein. Hey, Stan, how are you?
Hey, Lee. Good to talk to you. Talk little music and baseball. I love it.
That's right. You can't beat that, that's for sure. So tell us a little bit about your musical background. I know you're an author and a journalist and some of the things that you've been doing these days.
Well, growing up at the Jersey Shore, I grew up in Neptune. I went to, I believe, the same high school that you did, Neptune High School, few years behind you. And growing up at the shore, when all of a sudden, back in the 1973, I walk in the local Two Guys store and I see an album, Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. I'm like, huh? Who's doing an album about Asbury Park? That's where, I go and play pinball and everything. Little did I know I was 13 years old at the time, and that was Bruce Springsteen. So living at the Jersey Shore, you sort of become a Bruce Springsteen fan over the years and, caught him. Not quite as much as you in the early Pony days, but about late 1979, I started catching him in the bars and everything in Asbury Park. And it's great to be part of it. Hey, this guy all of a sudden is singing about places right in my backyard practically.
Absolutely. Now, how did you get into journalism?
I always liked reading newspapers. I even remember going back to junior high. They had an offer where you could get the daily news that morning in class. I don't know, you paid $1 a week or whatever, $1 a month, and you got the daily news. And I always had a newspaper with me. I always liked reading it. And then I joined Junior High Times at Neptune and was a sports editor there and a news editor. And then when I got to high school, I was part of the Blazer at Neptune High School, was sports editor there. And then my senior year of high school at Neptune, I got a call from Tony Graham, who's a legendary Jersey Shore radio guy and sports writer, asking me if I wanted to work at the press, Asbury Park Press. So I was 17, this is 1977. And I remember they paid me $2 an hour. And he asked me if I wanted to work there. And so, it was thrilling. And I remember my first byline and everything. And I just always loved it. I always loved journalism, being a part of it, reading, and kind of sad what has happened in newspapers now. But I was a big part of it, a big part of me for years.
At the same time that you were downstairs in the Asbury Park Press, I was upstairs at WJLK in the same building, and I was Tony Graham's engineer on his radio show.
Is that right?
Oh, he was the greatest. Absolutely. I was really saddened when, I found out, well, Tony really was a homeboy. He didn't want to go out too much, and he loved everything about the shore. And I said, Tony, there's this TV thing going on with sports, ESPN it's called. You should really apply there. I said, you'd be great. And then I said, well, there's now sports radio. You should be on there. Because he was, to me, one of the greatest sportscasters that I've ever heard, including some of the greats. And it just that Tony wanted to stay local. He loved his Phillies, that's for sure. And he was just wanted to be a homeboy. So but
no cheering in the press box didn't apply to Tony when it came to the Phillies.
Right. He and I did the local high school football games. We did the Neptune Asbury game for many years. And when Tony did a remote show from Bob Davis's restaurant.
Sure.
Bob Davis, former New York Jet quarterback. Tony and I go way back, and he was one of the greatest, and still is. He's a great guy. Still is. He's
what a voice too! Perfect voice.
Exactly. Great. And always had that pencil bouncing back and forth in his hand.
Yes. We used to say Tony's unique.
Tony was unique.
There's only one Tony.
Yes, and always had that baseball cap on.
Yep.
So after the Asbury Park Press, where did that lead you?
Well, I went to St. John's University, majored in athletic administration, covered the basketball team there, Lou Carnesecca. Chris Mullen was a freshman when I was a senior. And I also went to school with Frank Viola and John Franco, speaking of
Oh, right,
baseball.
right, sure.
Yeah, John Franco was in my classes starting freshman year. So
No kidding.
I just remember, oh, this hot shot pitcher from Brooklyn was on the St. John's baseball team. And
Right.
Viola, I knew them. They were both great guys. And St. John's, as I said, in major in athletic administration, my senior year, I was still working at the Asbury Park Press part-time. I don't know how I juggled it all. And my senior year, I interned with the Knicks, and they offered me a full-time job there. So I worked in the Knicks front office from 1982 to 87. I worked with Dave DeBuscher as his administrative assistant. And that was the Hugh B. Brown, Bernard King era. So that was a big thrill for me.
Sure.
All right.
So
then
go after the Knicks.
After the Knicks, I went back into journalism. They had a management change in 87 and decided the team hadn't been doing well. So they let the whole front office go too. It's amazing. Now there's like, I don't know, 600 people in the front office. Back then we had like 8. So, but anyway, after that, I went back to the Asbury Park Press and worked there. Then the press bought the Home News, which was up in East Brunswick. And I worked there. They became the Home News Tribune. 1999, then the Star Ledger started hiring people, and I joined the Star Ledger sports department. So I was at the Star Ledger for 19 years, up until 2018.
So nowadays, you do a tour of the Jersey Shore. So tell us a little bit about that.
Right. My friend Gene Mickle and I've always been a tourist. I've always loved touring. I've always loved to, if I hear about something, I like to see the location and where this happened. I think the play Hamilton, the musical, has a song, The Room Where It Happened. I always like that. I always like seeing things. When I used to go to Los Angeles, I used to just always go up and down the Sunset Strip and like even Springsteen stuff, like, oh my God, there's the Roxy. That's where those famous shows were, right here.
Right, sure.
I've always been a tourist. And then I realized so many people, especially born in the USA period, and you know this very well too, a lot of people were coming to Asbury Park to see the Bruce sites.
That's right.
And, he sings about Madame Marie and the casino and the palace and the Stone Pony, is such a, monumental place. And I realized I always wanted to write about it. And then I realized around 1999, Gene Mickle and I got together. We had gone to London to see Bruce, and we had done a Beatles walking tour. They take it to Abbey Road and all the other places. And we said, we could do a Springsteen tour somehow. So this was when Bruce was playing 15 nights at the then Continental Airlines Arena in the Meadowlands. There was something, the internet was just starting along. And we had done, there was something called the Lucky Town Digest, which is a precursor to Facebook and everything else. So one of Bruce's off days in those 15 nights, we said, let's put it out where we'll do a walking tour of Asbury Park and Belmar. And I think we did free all too. Charge no money. Let's see if there's any interest. And we'll put it out there. And about 70 people showed up. And we were like, oh, we're on to something. Then I really knew we were on to something at that same tour. We went through Asbury Park. Then we went to East Street and 10th Avenue in Belmar to have to take that photo. And a guy said to me, you got to give me 5 minutes. I said, okay, why? He goes, I've already run out of film. I got to there's a drugstore there. I got to buy more film. So this was before the digital age and everything. Yeah, right. But then I sort of realized, hey, there's an interest here. People want to see these places. And so we've expanded on it. We've came out with a book in 2002. I've had 4 editions of the book, Rock and Roll Tour of the Jersey Shore. And we're still doing tours. They're private tours as people contact us and we take them around. So. Okay. But I love showing this area, just like you. I think always enjoy sharing your stories. I love showing people the Jersey Shore.
Sure. I used to love when people would come to the Stone Pony and like in the middle of the day, wondering, what's going on here. And it's just like trying to catch the vibe. And it became that people were calling the Stone Pony the Cavern Club of the United States, thinking that Bruce started there, although he had a few records out.
Right.
Even before Pony opened. But it was great. We made some great friends. In fact, there was one story I can tell. A gentleman from Japan came, and he must have taken the train down from New York and stopped in at my office, which was the Stone Pony Annex, now a parking lot. But he walks in and he has just a Japanese English dictionary in his hand, couldn't speak much English or anything, and just wanted to know where the ocean was. So I took him outside and I just pointed down the street. He's only a block away. So we got to be real good friends. I introduced him to everybody at the Stone Pony, and he came that night. He got introduced to Kevin Buell, who is famous for, and I don't think Kevin actually was working for Bruce at the time. I'm not mistaken, but nevertheless, we stayed friends over the years, and we still communicate now through Facebook. So
That's wonderful.
so many stories I could tell of people that would just come just to see what Asbury Park was looking like. And this is way before the redevelopment. So,
Yeah.
you know, it was pretty, you know, nasty back then, but it was
Well,
great.
let me just ask you, I mean, talking about famous clubs, famous bars, you mentioned the Cavern Club in Liverpool. I mean, I put the Stone Pony, I'm not going to put it up with the Beatles, but Stone Pony, if that's number one, the Stone Pony, I think is 2 or 3. You have the Whiskey A Go Go in Los Angeles and, you know, maybe a couple other places. But I mean, I think Stone Pony is one of the most famous bars in the world. It is.
I'd have to agree because I've seen it firsthand where people come just because of Asbury Park and the Stone Pony, and they still do today, even though the town has changed completely. So much gentrification has gone on in Asbury Park. It's nowhere near what it was back in what we might call the golden days or the glory days. So let's talk baseball, Stan. I see a Yankee poster right behind.
Yeah, no, you can see that. Yeah, it's signed. That's one of my, I'm always a collector too. It's signed by DiMaggio, Whitey Ford, Phil Rizzuto, Reggie Jackson, Enos Slaughter, who was a Yankee, Bob Lemon, Don Mattingly, Yogi Berra, and Catfish Hunter. So wow, I haven't looked at that in a while, but yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great, especially it's because it's signed. We've had some stories on our show here by some people that, in fact, Sharon Lasher, who was the last one to tell a Yankee story, she used to stop at Yogi Berra's house with a bunch of her friends on their bikes, and Yogi would come out and serve iced tea and lemonade to all the kids.
Wow.
They knew he was home when the red convertible was in the driveway.
Is that Montclair? Was that where
right,
it was?
That's right. She lived down the street.
Yeah, wow.
The other story was by Danny Roselli of the Mylars. And Danny worked at a gas station in Hillside where Phil Rizzuto used to get gas. And Phil would bring baseballs that he would sign and give to the kids and to the guys that worked there. So it was pretty famous. We're still hoping to get Jack Scarangella on the show as a guest because he's got some Yankee stories probably that'll beat everybody's.
Right.
So, and your Yankee fandom that started at an early age?
Yeah, you know, I always tell people when I was first getting into baseball, the Mets were good. It's around 69. I was 9 years old, and that's when the Mets, you know, and won the World Series. And I always were like, yeah, fancy smancy team, Tom Seaver, look at him, he's so good. And I became a Yankee fan. I like Bobby Mercer. And you know, that was a big thrill for me, just rooting for the Yankees and whenever they were good, as we say, the Horace Clarke years.
Right.
But I became a Yankee fan because like people will say to me now, oh, it's like rooting for IBM. It's like, no, I was with them before Steinbrenner even joined. I always liked them. And just tell you a quick story. I used to do baseball card shows for years to get a lot of my autograph collection. Sure. In 1989 in Atlantic City, I worked a card show that had the living 500 home run hitters at the time, which was Ted Williams, Mickey Mantle, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, and more, Reggie Jackson. And anyway, Bobby Mercer was there because he was doing some promotional work for something. I had a bigger thrill meeting Bobby Mercer than any of the 500 home run hitters. I mean, that was such a thrill for me to meet Mercer because he was the guy with the Yankees, him and Munson at the time, back in the early 70s, as you remember. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Now, what about today's Yankees?
Frustrating.
Tough to be a Yankee fan these days, huh?
Yeah, well, you know, we're used to good stuff. I'll tell you what, I really enjoy, maybe it's getting older. I really enjoy, and I think with these wonderful big screen TVs we have and everything in high def, I love sitting home and watching the game. I love Michael Kay, David Cohn, and Paul O'Neill. I love listening to the commentary. I think it's great, just their chatter.
They are some of
And
the best, that's for
yeah,
sure, especially
yeah,
Cone, because he's
yes,
been on the field as a pitcher. He knows exactly what's going on in the pitcher's mind and
mm,
with the catcher. O'Neill, he can analyze hitters like you wouldn't believe
right.
sometimes and he had some of the weirdest batting stances ever with that little kick that he used to do. And when you see some of the guys these days, like I think I think Voigt has maybe a similar kick now
Right.
with that Paul O'Neill had, but not making the kind of contact that O'Neill did. And that's what I think is sad now, whether it's batting coaches or something's not right, where the communication's not right. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to tell these guys you got to make contact.
Right.
You know, we have another show planned for the future, and we interviewed Lee Lowenfish.
Oh, I wrote about him years ago.
Yeah.
I knew him years ago. He's an author. Yeah.
And actually, he has summered in Spring Lake, so he's
Right.
down here. Lee analyzes everything about baseball these days, and he's one of the guys about. We talked about war. What is it good for? He tried to explain, what war was to the viewers, and he's just such a great character. He's a
Yeah.
funny guy. Actually, he wrote a book with Tom Seaver.
Right. Right. He had books out years ago, I think, on the reserve clause, even.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I think he does a great Bob Shepard imitation too.
Oh, he does?
Wow. Yeah.
I've tried that myself too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Bob Shepard was a classic, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know about you, but the game, watching it is frustrating at times, though, with all the shifts, and it seems like a home run or a strikeout so much. And it's like,
Yeah.
we all love home runs, but where's the exciting doubles and it's, singles? I mean, they're there a little bit, but I just noticed it just seems home run or strikeout for
That's
these
why
days.
watching a guy like DJ LeMahieu is so really
Right.
enjoyable, because he's all over the place and he'll hit to the gaps, and
Yeah.
then and once in a while he'll get a home run out of it. I always said that if you make good contact, the ball's going to go. So
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. And sometimes the harder you hit it, you hit it at somebody. So then, you're not as lucky. But I'd say that sometimes the bunts are starting to come back, especially with the runner on second base. And I don't know, it could change again. It's just sometimes a style of play.
Yeah. And, I don't know, last night, it was a Sunday night game. The Yankees played the Red Sox. And I mean, about the seventh inning, it just started to drag and drag and drag. It just wasn't moving along. And even the commentators, you could tell, A-Rod and whoever the play-by-play guy is, I don't know his name, but you could even hear the frustration in their voices. This is taking forever.
I have a little trouble with the ESPN people. They love to hear themselves talk.
Yeah.
And to me, it's more about what's going on in the game right that minute, not what the future is or what the past is or what this guy used to do or what team he was with, etc. There's too much. I think they're analyzing the game properly, but it's way too much. You got to
exit velocity, Lee. Exit velocity. Okay, that's their big thing.
And they're doing that even on ground balls and
yeah, I know.
What's the
exit velocity? Yes.
I just had reread a book on hitting by Ted Williams.
Wow.
Strange as it may seem, Ted was one of the first people that ever talked about launch angle. He didn't talk about it in those terms, but the pictures in the book show you don't use a level swing, you use an uppercut, a slight uppercut. And that's what made Ted Williams such a great hitter. And I wish somebody would get that book out and show some of these people, because it even showed where Ted, little spots in the strike zone where Ted was most efficient in hitting.
I remember that, the color.
Yes.
I remember that. The art of hitting. Yep.
There is not much there that he didn't hit, except that he knew his pitch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Stan, we're running out of time. It's been great talking to you and catching
Lee,
up.
thank you.
It's
I just tell you one quick story. I had a
yeah.
pleasure of working at a baseball card show in the 80s in Brooklyn. And I was sitting with Nolan Ryan, and next to Nolan Ryan was Ted Williams. And I
Wow.
got to overhear their conversation back and forth. And I
Unbelievable.
was just like, Ted was asking him about current hitters in the game today and how you pitched to him and everything. And it was like, wow.
Both guys were amazing. I saw Ted Williams actually when he managed the Washington Senators
Right.
at a doubleheader in Yankee Stadium. And that's when they actually allowed people to move downwards to the lower boxes if you were upstairs because they wanted it to look good on TV.
Right.
So
Right.
I remember seeing Williams and just having him talk about hitting. It's just amazing. And Nolan Ryan is the guru of pitching. I mean, he brought
Yeah.
weightlifting, light weights to pitching, etc. And him and Tom House brought a new way of conditioning for pitchers. And there he was at 41 years old, threw 104 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Just efficient. And if you take a look at Jack Leiter, you'll see Nolan Ryan in him. The
Right.
way
Yeah.
the leg kick and everything, it's exact. And Al must have gave him the book and said, "Read this," and this is way because I've scouted Leiter, especially when he was at high school at Del Barton. He was nowhere near the pitcher he is in college, so it's changed.
Right.
He was good, but he was small, and he grew a lot in 2 years that he's been in college. But yeah, he's well worth the money they had to use to sign him. Thanks, Dan. I really
All
appreciate
right, Lee,
it.
my pleasure.
We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you for having me.
Good night, everybody.